because he's certainly strong enough to know that in that previous game, much worse could have happened, right? For his standards, MBL definitely could have won that game. So overall, he's got to be happy. He knows he's going to have some games in this event.
Artemiev took a lot of time against Arjun and Aman. Here, after d4, d5, Artemiev has again paused to think. Magnus playing the Queen's Gambit declined, which makes a lot of sense. It usually gives a lot of pieces.
Just had.
Yeah, and Artemiev going for quite a think here in a very standard theoretical position. After like 2.5 minutes, he finally decides on knight of 3, knight of 6 quickly by Magnus, and he goes knight c3, which is kind of interesting to start with knight f3, not knight c3. Well, what do you think, Aman?
Yeah, knight c3 offers some more opportunities. We have seen the move c5 played in this event so far, so perhaps avoiding some of those more aggressive variations like the Tarash ideas with black playing the move pawn to c5. So if I just move back here, I'll just put knight c3 on the board. And we have seen this. It was actually a really interesting game. Pawn takes d5 and then e4 played by Arjun earlier in this tournament, and it honestly worked really, really well. It was a beautiful game that Arjun played with the white pieces, and Magnus might be interested in maybe playing into something like this. Of course, e4 not forced, but no matter what here, as white, it's a bit of a more open, loose position, and Artemiev, known as a more solid player, Artemiev, I think his games get interesting because he gets low on the clock.
Right. Yeah, and here we see c6 by Magnus going for the semi-Slav, e3, a very solid move by Artemiev, and knight bd7. I think the semi-Slav, again, in the Queen's Gambit decline, is usually one of the options that gives the most winning chances for black. As you keep a lot, is very solid for white, and honestly, always very difficult to cook up any real imbalance with black.
That's right. Yeah, Queen c2 is the standard move here, just to see how black is going to respond, and you're usually hopeful to delay moving this light squared bishop. If black captures before you've moved, it's always a benefit to take back right away, but obviously black player knows this and certainly will not be playing pawn takes on c4. Will rather wait for bishop e2, and then an extra move will need to be spent there.
Right, and we see pawn to b6 by Magnus. A bit of a sideline. The main line by far and large is definitely the move bishop to d6. So now Artemiev has paused to think as well. The main options here are developing the bishop, the light square bishop that is, either the e2 or d3, or b3, also possible. So let's see what he is gonna do.
Yeah, b6 is a little bit offbeat, and Artemiev, we've seen from the last game, he's playing in a way that's relatable to me in terms of the clock management. Previous game was certainly indicative. We see here early time spent as well. Obviously, that's not something that is good to do, but at the same time, it's part of his style. He uses the time to. wouldn't say that rook f6 is that pleasant. So bishop g5 permanently stopping that feels pretty nice. And rook d1 with very low time. We can see the idea of rook f6 and rook to d8. I think this is the plan, right?
Yep, no, that is the plan, because if you take the queen, there will be rook takes f8, king h7, rook h8 checkmate. And another funny line, Amon, is that if you would take the rook on d8, there's queen takes g7 checkmate. So, very tricky move by Artemiev.
Very tricky, but this is what having that 10 seconds does to you. There is a reason why this is given a question mark by the engine. And after rook f6, rook d8, amazingly in this position, with the queen hanging, with queen d8 possible, the move that black can play is actually the crazy bishop c6 to at least keep the game going. And there's no rook f8 immediately because of this. And I mean, having a look at that position, anything can still happen.
Right, Magnus has a minute and 40 seconds to figure it out. Let's see if you will. I mean, not easy for black to spot, right? I mean, 6, but you see rook d8, and you might think like, oh wait, am I just losing there? Let's see. I mean, very tough for Magnus now as well with the time situation. Oh, I think he is going for that line.
It's given a brilliancy, but actually rook d1 and rook d8 has reduced the advantage for white, but only, and I repeat, only if bishop to c6 is played here. Magnus needs to dig deep. He's got a minute to find the only move in the position that's worth playing. Otherwise, Bach, you can go ahead and resign this because there's ideas like queen takes f6 that are also in the position.
Yeah. Right, so yeah, bishop c6 the only move on the board. I wonder, Amon, if after bishop c6, queen takes f6, do we have to take a rook on e8, or can we get away with taking that queen on f6? Does that? I think maybe we can. Right, rook f8, king h7.
Yep, I think that's the key detail. And it looks like something different has been played. Magnus does not see bishop c6. Instead, bishop takes g2.
Wait, but king g1, how is he planning to continue the game? I mean, rook takes f8 is threatened. And if you go rook f6, then we can just go queen d5. And rook takes f8? What is that? Yeah. Rook g6, but king f2, that's game over.
That is game over.
Off.
Resignation as Vladislav Artemiev